Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Tanner's Favorite Things. I am Tanner Knight, and today we are wrapping up this 6-guitar collection that I'm calling the Gregg Collection. These last 6 guitars belong to my friend Gregg, who is an amazing guitarist, a shredder who loves playing fast and high up on the neck, and as you can imagine, his guitar collection reflects that style. He's a huge fan of George Lynch, and we're talking about another George Lynch guitar. If you didn't catch the last one, the Kamikaze, I'll link that one below, but that's a really good introduction to the George Lynch guitars of ESP because it was his very first signature model with ESP. So in this episode, we're going to continue with that George Lynch ESP legacy, only we're going to be talking about the next guitar that came out as his signature guitar in the late 80s. This is a 1989 George Lynch Sunburst Tiger is what it's called. You'll also see it referred to as a purple tiger because we do have lots of purple in this guitar, and the purple is there to kind of mimic a predator hunting at dusk. And you'll see that purple kind of wrap around the edges and just add a little bit of flavor to the more prominent tiger decal, which obviously purple tiger, sunburst tiger, that's where it comes from. Similarly, in line with that hunter predatorial theme, our pickup is a specially wound Seymour Duncan called the Hunter. Kind of cool. And our single coil is an ESP wound single coil called the SS120. This is kind of characteristic of all George Lynch guitars. He does utilize this single coil quite a bit, so you'll see that as a pull-push or push-pull option here. You don't see a toggle switch anywhere. In order to access that single coil, you just got to pull your tone or your volume knob up, and you're in the single coil. Push it down, you're in the bridge humbucker. One characteristic of George Lynch guitars that's kind of across the board is the fact that they're heavy. When he went to ESP and he said, okay, I want my guitar to have these characteristics, one of the main characteristics for him was being a heavy, solid guitar. So they chose maple as the tone wood for the body. And if you know anything about maple, you'll know that it's dense, that it's heavy, that it's just a thick-ass wood that really resonates a ton. And that's what we got. We have maple in a thick, about 2-inch width body here. So just a big old slab of maple with a one-piece maple neck. Really classic, maple all around. On this fretboard we have rosewood instead of ebony as in the Kamikaze, so a slight variation there between the two signature models, but this one does have rosewood and it's a nice dark rosy rosewood. As you might have guessed, with all shredder guitars, we do get a big old tremolo. This is a Floyd Rose original, so it doesn't have any ESP branding or any other branding whatsoever. It's just a Floyd Rose original in this ESP Custom Shop guitar. And I haven't mentioned that yet, but this is out of the ESP Custom Shop, so their highest level of guitar luthiers. They're making these guitars for George and for you to play like George, and it's just really some of the best quality guitars out of ESP that you can get. All of these George Lynch models do have a recessed input jack or output jack, and it's the Strat style kind of inlaid in there, and it's just a really nice design. Makes the cable kind of out of the way. The ESP necks are one-piece neck for this era. Sometimes you'll see 3-piece necks as in the Kramers that we saw in the previous episodes, but this is just one piece of maple all the way up and down. And we do have Goto tuners, which are the kind of smallish style, but they really hold a tune well. And the other thing about these tuners is that they're kind of academic, given that our Floyd Rose locks at the nut and at the bridge. So those tuners, they just don't come into play too much. They're out of the way. You don't even think about them. That's a good thing. So one thing to know about the 1989 release, this is the very first year that the Sunburst Tiger was available to the public. This is a non-painted headstock. You can see we have the natural headstock with just the black ESP logo. It's very classic, but most of these, every single run afterwards, will have the painted headstock to match the design. So that's one of the very unique features from this early 1989 release of this Sunburst Tiger. It does have the hockey stick style of headstock, and if you'll notice, it's going the other direction. It's actually going down compared to the Kamikaze, which was facing up, which is slightly different. But this is the hockey stick headstock from ESP, and it's pretty classic at this point. There is a little volute on this neck, kind of this little bump here. That's what a volute is, and you'll see them a lot in Gibson guitars from the 70s. They're designed to take a lot of the kind of stress areas out of the neck where it might crack easily, just to give you a little more wood there, a little more girth, so that it doesn't crack if it just happens to tap up against, I don't know, a drum cymbal or something like that. But this is a very heavy, heavy guitar, and as a result, the tones are equally heavy. So these George Lynch guitars have a very wide and flat fretboard. That's one of the signature aspects of his guitars. He likes a 16-degree radius fretboard, which is very flat. The Fenders and Gibsons kind of top out at 12 degrees. This is a full 4 degrees flatter than that. So a much bigger circle being drawn around here to create that radius, which is much flatter, kind of like a classical guitar almost. And in regards to classical guitars, it's a lot wider than your normal neck as well, similar to a classical. So a wider nut and a wider fretboard in general, but he feels that that gives him a little more space to individualize notes and move between them, bend them, you name it. So the back does not get the bangle design, it just gets the sunburst. So that's a bit more evident as to why this thing is called a purple sunburst rather than purple tiger, or sunburst tiger rather than a purple tiger, because the purple is really just on the edges. But it's kind of known that colloquially as the purple tiger, and you can see why. All of these ESP guitars, all signature ESP guitars, from Kirk Hammett to Ian Scott to George Lynch, you name it, they all have these individualized graphics that are decals. And we talked about the Kramers, especially the Dennis Klein Kramers, having unique airbrush designs in a lot of cases, which really add to the cool factor of those guitars. And that's not what we have here. They are unique designs to the guitar, but they're decals so that they can be produced exactly the same every single time. So you'll see this design from 1989 all the way up, and it doesn't change. Or if it does, it's very, very slight and just maybe a slightly different hue, or maybe they switch out paints or something like that. But for the most part, they try to stay as consistent as possible with the decals. As far as the condition of this guitar goes, it's in very, very good condition. Not quite as good as the Kamikaze that we saw in the last episode, but there's only a couple points that need to be pointed out here. The first of which, again, our neck pocket. I don't know if you can see in here. Right there, there's a little crack in the finish. Again, not a crack in the wood, just in the finish. So it's not going to separate or be a problem or give you issues down the line. It's just kind of what these poly finishes do. If they encounter some sort of jolt or something like that, they're prone to crack instead of check, like you would see a nitrocellulose finish do. But the wood underneath, I'm sure, is perfectly sound and untouched. Other than that, there's a few nicks and dings here and there. Tiny little one in this little bout here that's not even worth talking about. Just a tiny little dot on the edge here. Very, very minimal wear, very minimal evidence of play until you get to the neck. We do have quite a bit of play wear on the neck, which is what I would call honest play wear. This is not relict. This is not just like someone taking sandpaper and trying to get their own profile. This is just honest neck wear, and the finish on the lower side has been rubbed away from someone having their sweaty hands there. Honest play wear. That might turn off some people, but honestly, I kind of dig it. I like evidence that a guitar was played because that shows, oh, this thing is fun to play. Let's pick it up and make some music with it. You cannot feel it when you play it, so it's not like it's going to affect how you play the guitar. It's just there and part of this. It's more of a feature to me now than something to be derided, but that's what's going on as far as condition of this guitar. Just really, really fine condition. I would say 8.5 out of 10. I guess we can take a look at this Floyd Rose tremolo pocket a little closer as well. Not much going on there. 3 springs, 5 claws, very Stratocaster in design. It's just a little more robust. And of course, the locking nut, which is one of the features of the Floyd Rose tremolo, makes so that the tuning stays perfectly in tune, or as perfectly as you could hope. All right, since this guitar does not have any signatures on it It is a signature model, but it doesn't have Sharpie signatures is what I'm trying to say. I can play this a little bit more, so let's hear what this guitar sounds like in a few different scenarios, and then we'll get a loop going to hear what it sounds like in the context of a band. So today I've got this guitar plugged into the PV 5150, really the ultimate metal amp, and although I can't do it the kind of justice that George Lynch could, this is the perfect combination for this guitar. So our Seymour Duncan The Hunter pickup sounds like this. This is our humbucker in the bridge. Our cabinet is the orange PPC 2x12 featuring two Celestion creamback speakers. One of my favorite combinations, so let's hear this thing in the PV lead channel. Just for kicks, let's hear that single coil in the lead channel. I'll bet it sounds a little stratty even still, so let's hear what that sounds like. So you can get some stratty sounds out of this. That sounds really close to Strat for being such a high gain monster, and of course an ESP wound pickup. So totally usable tones with the single coil in the lead channel. Who would have thought? However, the meat and potatoes is right here in the bridge, so let's keep on rocking. And I always like to add kind of another tone into the mix here. This is the JHS Nauticlon pedal, which is obviously a takeoff on the Klon Centaur pedal, which is just astronomically expensive, $5,000, $8,000. No thank you. The JHS pedal costs $200 and it sounds exactly like the Klon. So this is what that pedal sounds like with this guitar in my optimal settings. Here we go. Still moderately in tune. It's starting to come out with all of those wangling and bangling, but that's the beauty of the Floyd Rose. It will typically stay more in tune than if it did not have those appointments. So this guitar sounds awesome. It's a lot of fun to play despite the fact that it's way more metal than something I'm used to. Something like this, you stick out. You stand out like a sore thumb on stage if you're playing this, and if you don't have the chops to match it, I don't know, it doesn't look good. So this is not a guitar that I could personally wield comfortably with the knowledge of how poorly I play it. So I'm not a shredder. That's neither here nor there, but hopefully this gives you a little bit of an idea of what this guitar sounds like in the real world. So to end these videos, I usually like to add in a full band loop where I add guitar, bass, and drums to a loop and play this guitar in kind of a short lead over that to give you an idea of what it sounds like in the full context. So we got a little bit of EQ on here, but for the most part, the signal is as dry as possible, no additional effects in post-production. This is what this thing sounds like from this one Sennheiser E906 mic. Let me know if you have any experience with any of the George Lynch guitars, but this one in particular. It's one of my favorites as far as just how she looks. It makes you want to pick it up and play it, but again, it's intimidating. If you don't have the chops like I don't, then it kind of says, I don't know if you're ready to hold me, but luckily we can throw caution to the wind in this safe space and play as crappily as we want. But let me know if you have any experience or if you would like to share your playing of your George Lynch Sunburst Tiger ESP guitar. I'd also like to thank Gregg for allowing this series to be possible, so thank you, Gregg. It's really great to have a multitude of different guitars on the channel, and these are ones that I just personally would never have checked out due to a number of different factors, primarily being price. These are expensive guitars. Collectible, very sought after guitars from the George Lynch lineage. So thank you, Gregg. I really appreciate you letting me showcase these guitars on this channel, and hopefully we can get them sold for you. So we'll play you out with the loop, but like and subscribe if you like this type of content. That always helps, and I will see you on the next one.